Hello everybody, I'm Zach Shaw, Alejandro Zúñiga here talking Michigan, Indiana, here from Bloomington Memorial Stadium, where the Wolverines took down the Hoosiers 31-10. And before we get to the football stuff, obviously the big thing, the big event, I suppose, is Mike Hart endured a seizure. It sounds like he'll be okay. He's going to stay in Bloomington for the night for further evaluation, but you know, players and coaches both talked about it. It sounds like he's going to be all right, but really scary moment. I mean, we were up in the press box, but you could just sense in the stadium, everyone was immediately, deeply concerned, because he literally collapsed on the sideline right after Indiana scored a touchdown. He coached at Indiana too, so both sides, you saw the kneels, you saw the coaches, really, Tom Allen just sent his well wishes in his press conference. I mean, you could tell this was really something that was honestly just kind of difficult to move on from emotionally. Like, it was hard to watch the next drive because the players are emotional on the sidelines. I guess your thoughts and what you were able to perceive in the post-game press conferences.
Yeah, I mean, number one, obviously, sending our best to Mike Hart. It was a very difficult scene, Zach, as you mentioned. As journalists, we have the good fortune of all these coaches. We talk to them, we know them, we interact with them. He's
one of the best too,
and we spoke with him this week because this was a big game for him. Obviously, the performances from the running back room have been there, but Mike Hart's a coach who coached here, so this was a big week for him. And Jim Harbaugh said he's in stable condition. Obviously, Jim Harbaugh's not a medical expert, and
he mentions that.
We're gonna he mentions that himself, and our hopes are that Mike Hart obviously gets well soon and gets to a place where hopefully he can continue coaching on the Michigan football team. But health first and foremost, and second, it impacted everyone who saw it. But I think what we heard from Jim Harbaugh today, and especially Blake Corum, Blake Corum and Mike Hart are very, very close. Yeah. They both spoke this week about how their relationship extends more than just on the football field. It's like a familial relationship. Blake Corum was at Mike Hart's house last Thanksgiving for that Thanksgiving meal. That running back room is very tight. So it impacts the team, but obviously, first and foremost, it's health, and we hope to see Mike Hart on the sidelines next week for Penn State. Yeah,
and when there is an update, you will be able to find it over at 247sports.com. Now, moving on from that, Jim Harbaugh, he kind of challenged the players to win this game for Mike Hart afterward, and I thought Michigan had a really great second half. 263-29 second half yardage margin, which says a lot about the offense, but also the defense. I mean, Indiana really just got dominated. They were outscored 21-0 in that second half. So for me, I really felt like on both sides of the ball, and I think some of it was Mike Hart, but talking to the players after the game, you heard a lot about they wanted to clean stuff up. They wanted to clean up the miscues. And Jim Harbaugh mentioned he felt like 25% of the plays in this game were what he would call uncharacteristic, i.e. not Michigan football. This is a team that doesn't get penalized a lot, doesn't make a lot of between-the-ears mistakes, but they started to a little bit in that first half for a number of reasons. But hard not to come away really impressed with the second half. And in my mind, it almost erases what happened in the first half. Some of the issues, they're still there. There's still stuff they have to clean up, but at the same time, the final score was the final score. Michigan's passing game got the job done. The pass rushers got their job done. Really, I just came away very impressed with how quickly they were able to show that resolve. Not, finger point. This is kind of their first test, gut check type situation where they're on the road. It's 10-10. Things clearly aren't going well. A lot of resolve. A lot of, just kind of calmly and coolly dominated in the second half and showed what they needed to show.
Yeah, it was a frustrating game, I think. Until the fourth quarter, it felt like Indiana was hanging around in ways that, not that they didn't deserve to be in the game, but it was a matchup of two teams where Michigan is clearly the more talented team.
If Michigan wants to be a top 5 team, I don't mean to cut you off, they can't have games where Indiana's hanging around. I think that's fair to say. It worked
against Indiana because Indiana is Indiana.
Yeah.
But it's not going to cut it next week against Penn State. It's not going to cut it, against a Michigan State even. However bad you think Michigan State's been, and certainly not against Ohio State.
A couple of the road games,
and the road games to come. I think what you mentioned is exactly right. Is that second half, it was 5 meaningful drives before the game was really over. It was punt, 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 and punt. That's 5. And then it was a turnover on downs to end it.
Sure.
But it was, for the Michigan defense, I think there was a bit of trepidation in the first half. There were a couple of scoring drives on back-to-back drives. There was the one that came down that I believe it was Mike Morris got his hand on for the blocked field goal. But outside of that, it was the performance you'd expect from the defense. And I think what was most impressive about it in the second half was that Michigan got pressure from across the defensive line.
Yep.
It was sacks. At one point in the middle of the fourth quarter, it was 6 sacks from 6 different players. Might have been 7 from 7 at the end of it.
It did. So McGregor.
So that was very impressive. And then on the offensive side of the ball, it was not as clean of a performance as you'd like. You just mentioned some of those between the ears issues. There were some missed throws from J.J. McCarthy, I think. There was the drop from Cornelius Johnson that would have been a very big gain. There were some things that I think play calling could have been a bit better, especially when Michigan goes for it on 4th down and gets stuffed.
Yeah.
Where have we seen that before, right? But at the end of the day, it was a 300-plus yard game for J.J. McCarthy. It was his first time doing that in his 5th start. J.J. keeps talking about the fact that the offense isn't fully evolved yet. He thinks there's more meat on the bone, and he said that several weeks in a row now. At some point you have to show it. This game maybe isn't where you do it, but I think next week is really going to be the test, right?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I do think, in my opinion, that the second half on the offensive side, I think that can be a springboard. I think they showed the potential weaknesses in that first half. The deep ball passing wasn't natural. The run game can get predictable against teams that know how to stop the run. I mean, you saw where things can go awry this season when they play, the better teams, I suppose. But the second half, I think you saw a lot of possibilities. I think you saw a lot of potential. I thought J.J. McCarthy looked really comfortable. Downfield and short intermediate stuff. I thought a lot of different route creativity. I thought the play calling was a little bit more aggressive in that second half. And then you saw how that opened up the run game. You saw Donovan Edwards get a little bit more into a groove in the run game. Blake Corum obviously continued to look like Blake Corum. That's something that's probably not going to change no matter who they're facing. But in my mind, the thing I'm watching is that second half. Now that they've done it, now that McCarthy has thrown for 300 yards, now that the receivers have made these plays, they get to go into practice this week with that experience and also that confidence. I think the first half certainly not a confidence building half, but I thought that second half, how crisp it was offensively, I'm curious to see if that can be a springboard because they really hadn't shown it in Big Ten play yet. I mean, even though they'd won comfortably against Maryland and Iowa, this was the first time that there was a true half where they were just obliterating the other team and they could do just about anything they wanted. Now, a lot of that came in the fourth quarter, but at the same time, that's what Michigan's built for. They have 4-quarter game plans. They do conditioning for 4 quarters, more if they have to. But I think you saw them win out over 4 quarters, and I think to me that's pretty valuable. And I'm cautiously curious to see if that offense can take what happened in that second half, bottle it, and take it into practice this week, because obviously a huge challenge next week against Penn State.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a perfect game, but it didn't have to be. Michigan ultimately 31-10. That's a 21-point win, and it was a game that really didn't feel close in the fourth quarter. No. It was, and it was a road game in the Big Ten. It's never easy to win road games.
Yeah,
especially after what Michigan went through emotionally in the first quarter with Mike Hart. Especially given that they've been playing a little bit shorthanded. They lost Trente Jones to what Jim Harbaugh said was a high ankle sprain. So, there were some pieces that were out. There were some emotional pieces. Jim Harbaugh challenged the team at halftime to play their best half of the season. I don't think this was necessarily their best half of the season personally, but it was a very, very solid second half. 21-0. The defense shut down,
I don't know how much better they could have looked, really. I mean, I guess scoring a little bit more, but no, it was very impressive. So, and that's what they needed to show. If they had 2 halves like that, we might be talking about a very different game and looking ahead to a very different season. But for now, Michigan is 6-0. They advance to what will presumably be a top 10 matchup next week against also undefeated Penn State. They were on a bye this weekend. Should be a lot of fun. We'll have tons of coverage leading up to that game, as well as at the game and after the game. We do it all here at 24/7 Sports, hence the name. For Alejandro Zúñiga, I'm Zach Shaw. We'll see you next time.